welcome to the September Intermission edition of Fuds on Film podcast. I am Craig Eastman, and with me tonight, Scott Morris.
Hello.
And Drew Tavendale.
Hello.
We will be talking to you on this podcast about Legend, the recent Tom Hardy film currently doing the round in cinemas. We will also be talking a little bit about The Man From U.N.C.L.E, and on a catch-up stylee, we'll also have something to say, or probably quite a few things to say about Fast and Furious 7. Without further ado, let's get going. Man From U.N.C.L.E then, modern cinema adaptation courtesy of your man Guy Ritchie, of the 1960s TV series of the same name. Scott, is Mr. Ritchie continuing his recent run of form here following the Sherlock films, or is he heading back into Revolver territory?
Guy Ritchie is not my man. Well, actually, to be fair, it takes a lot for me to actually hate a Guy Ritchie film. I didn't even mind Revolver all that much. It took Madonna to really drag him down to the gutter as far as I was concerned.
I like to think that I dislike Revolver, and then I remind myself, I haven't seen it.
Is that the Jason Statham one?
Yeah, with Ray Liotta.
I haven't seen that either, I don't think.
I just remember Adam and Joe making fun of it in his commentary track with the heavy-handed chess metaphors.
It's not a glittering moment in his career, but I didn't think it was that horrible. But The Man From U.N.C.L.E is, I think, will be remembered as one of his middling affairs. It is, of course, as you say, based on the 60s TV show it was, which I barely remember. It was on continual repeat when I was a kid, but I was going to say, only remember
not from first airing. We might.
It was one of those things. It was always like 6 o'clock weekdays in BBC Two, wasn't it?
Yes, it was that kind of tea time slot.
Yeah, one day was Star Trek, one day was The Time Tunnel, the next day was The Man From U.N.C.L.E. It was always in that sort of time slot.
Let's say I can only barely recall that, but from some research, it follows a similar kind of theme to this film. It started off being a relatively serious drama before broadening out into outright camp parody territory by the end of it, and that's a fairly good representation of the film. It seems to have followed much the same thing. It's set in the 60s. You have CIA agent Napoleon Solo, played in this instance by your man Henry Cavill, Superman himself, and he is a elite CIA operative. He's been sent, at the start of the film, he's sent over to help extract a German contact who they think will help him track down a criminal organisation that's shipping nuclear weapons around the place. Sent to stop him from the other side and also extract the same agent is a KGB operative, Ilya Kuryakin, played in this instance by Armie Hammer, and he's got the same brief but from the Soviet side of the equation. Through a series of contrivances, they wind up having to work together to take down this evil organisation, which isn't Spectre, but it's something similar. It's some organisation of counter spies that's trying desperately to alter the world balance. As part of this, Solo and Ilya have to team up against a variety of characters, mainly shipping magnate and his femme fatale wife, I think it was, who winds up basically being in charge of the whole thing. It's really very difficult to care all that much about the plot.
It sounds like it's got a lot going on.
It is not the most intricately plotted film you can imagine. It's much more sensible than that when you actually see it play. It's not a terrible plot, but basically it services well enough to kind of move through the film. But that's kind of really the whole watchword for the entire film. It's good enough to kind of get you through 2.5 hours or whatever it winds up being. I don't think it's quite that long, but it can just about sustain itself more or less on the charm of some quite nice period detail, and it has a very light-hearted tone in most places, some points kind of strangely so. There's some strange characterization going on. You've got things like Henry Cavill's character, Napoleon Solo, is completely unflappable, and it's quite annoying because he gets into some situations where he should at least flap a little bit, like when you're tied to a torture chair. You show a little bit of emotion and not just continually just make fun and make light of everything that's happening to you. Ilya Kuryakin, Armie Hammer's character, is given a strange rage control issue, which seems entirely superfluous, apart from basically having him, on occasion, flip out and beat people up to their bloody pulp, which doesn't seem to really add anything to anything. I'm not quite sure what the point of it was.
Sounds like it's probably stretching the remit of a 12 certificate film as well. It's a guy who flies into a bloody rage and massacres people every 5 minutes.
It's done in a light-hearted, amusing style, so it's fine.
Okay.
I mean, it does, because even has, a light-hearted Joseph Mengele-like Nazi, because don't we all just love that for a knockabout bit of comedy?
Yes, and strangely, the one scene that's played out and out for comedy is the one where it's him in the background being electrocuted to death in a chair where two people don't really know about it. It's in many ways a very strangely toned film.
Nazi slapstick gets a bad rep. You know what I mean?
Man from U.N.C.L.E. is very much middle of the road. It was absolutely fine. I didn't really mind watching it, but I can't in all honesty recommend it to anyone. It's absolutely acceptable, a distraction for a couple of hours, but there's not really anything at all in there, apart from perhaps some, there's some really nice locations. Visually, it looks quite a very pleasant film. It's got a lot of Guy Ritchie's style to it.
So you're selling it to me an awful, well, not that you're setting out to sell it to me, but it sounds like it's being sold to me as very much in the vein of the Sherlock Holmes movies, which I found perfectly acceptable, if overly long.
It misses out on having sort of like the same great central performances because it doesn't have Robert Downey Jr. in it.
Yeah,
right.
And I don't really think it's worth criticising any of the actors in it because they're very clearly given some sort of very broad stereotypes to play against, and it's not really their fault they're not showing much emotion because they've clearly been told not to. It doesn't have that going for it, but there's a lot of kind of knockabout light-hearted stuff. It's a perfectly fine watch, but it's really not worth it seeking out at any rate.
No,
I'd largely agree with that. I was quite looking forward to this actually when I saw that it was Guy Ritchie, because I actually really do like the Sherlock Holmes films he did.
Mm-hmm.
I thought he could handle that sort of double-header comedy, sort of straight man character. Got a really good performance of Jude Law, which is hard, and handled him and Robert Downey Jr. really well together. That sort of knockabout, sort of buddy comedy, but with a bit of an extra edge to it in there. Yeah. I really enjoyed that, particularly the second Sherlock Holmes film. So quite looking forward to The Man from U.N.C.L.E, and it's a bit of a disappointment. I largely agree with all that Scott said. There's odd things about the tone, and Armie Hammer's character's fairly emotionless, so he's hamstrung by that. It does lack chemistry, is possibly the word. There's certainly a certain kind of pizzazz or liveliness that the Sherlock Holmes films had that The Man from U.N.C.L.E. was missing. Yeah, and as Scott said, it looks great because there's a lot of style in it, and a lot of it is set in 1960s Italy, which is basically the most beautiful and stylish time period there's ever been.
Yeah, I think it's telling that almost all of the scenes that I really remember probably didn't have anything to do with the actual two nominal leads of the film. It was the supporting either locations or characters or actors, but not really the two guys themselves.
In terms of visual style, 1960s Italy, great. You just drool over how pretty all that and stylish that era looks. There was some funny moments in it, and nobody's perhaps the Nazi character side, because that's such a strange choice and some strange bits of tone in there. But nobody's bad in it. It's just nobody's particularly special either, and it's really quite forgettable. It didn't engage me much at all. Again, not awful, but I couldn't recommend it either.
There you go then. In which case, let's move on to Legend then, which I think, Drew, you're going to talk a bit about, in which, as far as I can tell, from what I'm told, everyone involved continues to perpetuate the myth that the Krays were anything other than a couple of vicious thugs.
Yes, a point I intend to make too. But yeah, so Brian Helgeland, who is perhaps best known for writing the screenplay for L.A. Confidential, returns here to the world of crime with, as you say, Legend, an adaptation of John Pearson's book, The Profession of Violence, The Rise and Fall of the Kray Twins. And it looks at the rise of the twins from smarter than your average thugs in London's East End to them becoming powerful crime lords with mafia connections and celebrity friends, and on to their self-inflicted downfall. The role of both twins, as I imagine most people listening know, is filled by Tom Hardy. Now, playing two leading roles in the one film is, at the very least, ambitious and, at worst, perhaps arrogant. But Tom Hardy has more than enough ability to play off of himself, though he has notably more success with Reggie than Ronnie. Here, his Reggie is a cocksure charmer, friendly, full of swagger, but with cold, hard steel just below the surface. And Reggie is by far the more interesting of Hardy's double roles. Ronnie, in contrast, and it's Ronnie that attracted Hardy to the film, it's Ronnie that he wanted to play, and playing Reggie as well was really the sweetener to the deal for the director. But Ronnie, in contrast, is the sort of psychotic, untrusting, dangerous character full of physical and verbal tics and affectations that, well, let's just be honest about it, actors love to get their teeth into. But I think Hardy here was attracted to the wrong character because he's simply not as compelling a character as his brother Reggie. And also, Hardy plays Ronnie dangerously close to caricature. Certain moments even border on the cartoonish. Elsewhere in the cast we have Emily Browning, who is sweet, likeable and vulnerable as Reggie's wife Frances, and it's through her eyes that the story's told. Alas, the story being told through her eyes means that it's also told through her voiceover. And as with almost all voiceovers ever, the film would be far better off without it. As a viewpoint though, it's reasonably successful, and it does frame the glamour and allure of their to their contemporaries of the power and respect which the twins commanded, and then that inevitably gives way to the sordid truth. The character Frances is disappointingly thin though, and it's all too easy for her to pass from thought when she's not on screen. Now, to go back to something Craig alluded to, he has the same feelings I have about this sort of thing, I believe. An issue that I often have with crime films is, to an extent, present here. To wit, that we are supposed to empathise, engage, and perhaps even sympathise with some particularly odious human beings. Now, fortunately, legend spares us from much of this. The Cray twins, Reggie in particular, have an undeniable magnetism and charisma, aided, in no doubt, by Tom Hardy's good looks. And their glamour and us EastEnders gotta stick together bruv ethos tries to explain why a pair of violent gangsters became such a fixture in 1960s London. Little pretense is made that these people are actually anything other than violent thugs, but legend still suffers from, though to a lesser degree, the same problems as the likes of Ned Kelly and Michael Mann's Public Enemies. By putting the villains centre stage, they become the heroes. But in the case of making the Krays heroes, or idols may be a better word, as with Kelly and John Dillinger, it is a case of art imitating life and not the other way around. When Reggie Kray died 40 years after his incarceration, thousands of people turned out for his funeral because, there were thousands of idiots in the world. Let's mourn this vicious thug. But legend is certainly interesting, and Hardy always commands attention when he's on screen. But while the period detail seems spot on, and a decent fist is made of explaining the twins' allure and their relationship, there is a certain lack of dynamism to the piece that leaves you wanting more. For such interesting characters, and in the swinging London of the 1960s, legend misses that certain sizzle which would make it special, something which Goodfellas, with which legend shares much, has in spades, but which writer and director Helgeland has failed to capture here. Nevertheless, it's a very well crafted piece, and Hardy's performances alone are worth the admission fee. It's also an interesting companion piece to 1990s The Craze, featuring the talents of Spandau Ballet, as it did, which actually not as awful a film as that would make it sound if you've not seen it.
It's not the worst it could have been, no.
So a companion piece to that film, because that took a somewhat different tack when trying to explain the infamous brothers, suggesting perhaps that much of their villainy was due to their relationship with their mother, who's a much more peripheral character in legend. So disappointing, could have been better, but definitely worth watching.
Oh, interesting.
I have been totally spoiled in this film. Someone on Twitter pointed out that your fella looks exactly like he's playing both Chris Morris and Peter O'Hanrahan from the Day to Day. And I've not been able to take it seriously since I saw that.
I haven't been able to take it seriously since I first saw the sort of the clips of of Tom Hardy playing. Who's the so is it Ronnie, the sort of the
Ronnie's
caricature?
the crazy one.
Yeah. As you say, Drew,
is.
just from those clips, I found it very not even bordering caricature. It just seemed overtly cartoonish, and I can't stomach
very
it.
cartoonish at points. The trailer doesn't help it. They don't feel quite so bad in context.
Yeah,
but it's always just only just on the right side of that, and because you're always thinking about it, it's hard to set that aside. And as I said, it's simply Ronnie's a far less interesting character. He's the crazy one, right? Okay, kind of crazy's been done before, and you sort of know what the crazy violent thug is like. Lots of films have had them. Reggie's a far more compelling character because he's the confident, charming one. He's swagger, and he's the one who's got the business brain. He's the one who's level-headed, but there's always that danger underneath of him just losing it, although still in a controlled way rather than a psychotic way. So I think Tom Hardy's been pulled towards the wrong character, but that his performance is so good anyway, it doesn't really matter which one he liked more because he's great in both. But he sort of got a bit too focused on Ronnie, and Ronnie's a bit over the top.
Which takes us then on to something of a catch-up film then, on demand. Recently, you will have been able to have caught up with Fast and Furious 7, as the three of us did quite recently. Or sorry, Drew, rather, you saw this at the cinema, right?
I did, yes.
Myself and Scott watched it recently on catch-up, never having seen an entire Fast and Furious film prior to this. I was told that I needn't necessarily have invested anywhere else in the franchise before enjoying this.
Is it perhaps worth doing a little potted recap of the history? Because just saying, if you had went back to 2001, I think it was me who walked out of seeing The Fast and the Furious and was told that it would become, there would be another 6 films of this, it would be one of the most successful franchises in modern cinema, I would have thought you were barking mad.
Another 6 of these, at which point they'll start saying that there's definitely another 3 planned.
Yes.
I guess, well, which of us has actually... Drew, you're the only one here to have seen the entire franchise, right?
I've now seen them all.
Oh, you've seen them all too, Scott? Okay. Okay, Scott, you give us a recap then.
First one, basically, seemed like a sensible enough idea. I remember, I've not watched this since 2001, so all I really recall of this was it had nice cars, very good use of sound design, a perfunctory but sensible enough plot, and a chemistry between the two characters that might as well have been the chemistry between a plank of wood and another plank of wood.
Which is sums up quite well the talents of Paul Walker and Vin Diesel.
Yeah. That was okay. The second film, 2 years later, Too Fast, Too Furious, swaps out Vin Diesel and replaces him with Tyrese Gibson, which actually, something of an upgrade.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the second one, actually.
Yeah. Not really much different from the same film. It's the same. They're all the same things.
I remember you guys reviewing it in our last incarnation of the website, and I seem to remember that, Drew, you'd said it was at least passable.
Yeah, I think both of us actually gave it quite a high rating. It was, again, perhaps Eva Mendes didn't do that any ill favour, but no, it's because it was light-hearted. It was a bit daft, but it was fun. Engaging enough performances, completely forgettable really, but it was quite interesting. And
sorry, put me straight here, because Vin Diesel wasn't in that one, but Paul Walker was, right?
Yes.
Right, okay.
Paul Walker's been in all of them.
Right, okay.
No, not really.
Apart from Tokyo Drift, he's not in that, is he? Vin Diesel's in Tokyo Drift, barely.
Briefly, barely, yeah. I mean, that was okay. It was more or less the same kind of thing. It's all just car heists, somehow always seeming to get mixed up with drug dealers or something, where they try and take down an even bigger bad guy, but they're all basically criminals doing these things. First one's probably got the most interesting kind of plot, where it's an undercover cop who's then sort of slightly turned towards the dark side, something which kind of shows up here and there again throughout the films, but is not really played on for all that much, all that great effect. Tokyo Drift 2006, I only really watched because work sent me over to Tokyo, so I thought it'd be a laugh to watch Tokyo Drift in Tokyo. And it might as well be a film from a different franchise. In fact, I think it is. I think it was probably an Initial D film that someone rebadged with a Fast and the Furious film.
Got sod all to do with it, really, doesn't it?
Yeah, very different. It's been kind of retconned to appear sometime after, like, between the end
chronologically,
Fast and Furious 6 and 7.
Right? Yeah.
Puzzling enough. I just watched Fast and Furious as the naming the naming of the franchise goes straight to hell by going to just Fast and Furious.
They dropped as if that was going to be distinguish it from the first film.
Well, wasn't that marketed as kind of this isn't a reboot, it's kind of, essentially a refresh, sort of a relaunch of the franchise again, with all the original cast back or something like that.
More or less. I mean, it's taken Tokyo Drift and ignoring it completely, so it's not really a reboot. I mean, the character relationships are still kind of maintained, but you could come to the series fresh from this and not really have missed much.
Yeah.
And it's the same sort of thing. It's just car heists, lots of shots of illegal street racing where largely it's just focusing a camera on a woman's buttocks and then a car.
I noticed that featured a lot in 7 as well, yes.
Yeah, that seems to be the series' mainstay. For up until, certainly all to this point, Fast and Furious is the last one that's probably overly concerned with the street racing scene or whatever it thinks the street racing scene is.
It's the last one that concerns itself with the fast more than the furious aspect.
Yeah, and all of these so far have been more or less fine. They've not been too silly. They're all enjoyable enough if you like fast cars and chase scenes. I'm not so fond of cars, but the chase scenes so far have been good enough and for the most part sensible enough that I can kind of let it slide. I mean, they've all been okay so far. I think Fast 5 is where it starts going downhill as you start getting into territory where it's just being silly.
Remind me, Scott, sorry, because they tend to blur a bit.
They do, don't they?
Is 4 the one with the tunnel under the US border and 5 the one in Brazil?
Yes.
Right, thank you. With the bank vault chase scene, which is interesting.
Proper silly. Yes. So I think 5 is the first thing where you see it started to go into the realms of quite silly, quite action scenes. It's a bit more focused on even gunfights at points.
Yeah, there's basically all-out urban warfare at one point in 5.
Yeah, the franchise at this point starts getting into a situation where it has to one-up what's gone before it. 5, it kind of one-ups 4 with its actions and its stakes to the point where it's still, borderline acceptable. Just about. It's still kind of semi-enjoyable. I think this is the first one where you see The Rock running around who's now trying to arrest both Dom and Brian, Paul Walker and Vin Diesel's characters, as they've now kind of fully gone off the reservation. So now you've got another cop trying to catch them down. And The Rock basically is a take no prisoners kind of cop who's more than happy to suplex people through tables first, then read them to rights. And I'm down with that. That's fine.
It's how he rolls. It's how he do.
It's not a way to kind of more ground the film in realism or anything like that, but it's kind of fun. So that takes you past 5, which is really just on the point where it's getting too silly. Now, I would have thought 6 was as stupid as you could make an action film and not have it just fly apart at the seams. The same gang do the same kind of stuff, but this time the cop, The Rock, has now engaged Dom and Paul Walker to take down a ex-special boat service, I think it is, agent who's now going around causing all sorts of mayhem and capturing all sorts of stuff, and it's just quite silly. And then you get to Fast and the Furious 7, which makes 6 seem quite sensible in comparison.
I have no idea what the hell was going on here.
I mean, basics of 7 is that in Fast and the Furious 6, Owen Shaw is this fella they've been trying to take down. I think Owen Shaw was played by who's that Welsh fella?
He's the one with the silly car that was flipping police cars in London, right?
Yes.
I saw the second half of that film, which I didn't realise until after I'd seen Fast and Furious 7. I have seen the last hour of Fast and Furious 6.
With its infamous 60-mile runway.
Yes.
Yeah. So as part of that, Dom and his crew have taken Luke Evans' character, Owen Shaw, and put him in hospital, which has enraged Jason Statham. And if there's one person you don't want to enrage, it's Jason Statham.
He was in the middle of looking at some photographs of men's penises when he got the news, and he is apoplectic.
Oh, he's so mad.
As we see by the opening sequence, which honestly is just... I'm not even sure... Assuming that was setting the tone for the rest of the film, I thought, this is an out-and-out comedy then. This is sort of... Honestly, it reminded me of bits of Snatch or something like that. It was just bizarre. Absolutely bizarre. And I thought, okay, so clearly we're not supposed to take this film seriously. And then for the rest of the film, everybody in it takes it deadly seriously.
Yeah, well, I think we're We're at Fast 7, so maybe you can take it away, Greg.
Take
no,
away.
just take it away from me.
Take away what?
From my mind.
My experience with this film, I think I live tweeted the first half hour that I was watching or something at which point I realised that I was probably just irritating people and losing followers because people were probably assuming that it was kind of put upon astonishment. But I can assure you that I have never been so baffled by a film and what clearly is its huge popularity. We are talking about the fastest film to have earned $1 billion at the global box office, if I remember correctly, and I think the fourth highest earning film of last year. Is that correct? Or this year, sorry. This year, rather.
I know it made a lot of money.
It made an awful lot of money. And I honestly, from everything I've heard and everything I've read about this film, even from sort of various sort of vaguely respected critics seem to have said, well, it's not great, but it's, it's at least fun. It kind of does what it does, and it's a good way to pass 2 hours. No, it's not. I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. I don't get where anyone has found enjoyment in this film. It's not even so bad, it's good. I watched the whole thing expecting someone to turn to the camera and just wink, which they come close to doing at a couple of points, but they don't quite. There are two people who are taking this film in the spirit in which it's intended, and those people are Dwayne Johnson and Kurt Russell, right? Everyone else is taking this seriously, and I don't know how you take a film seriously where these people who 6 films ago were street racers, now, as far as I can tell, they're some sort of international superpower-laden crime-fighting team.
Yeah, it's now a superhero movie, isn't it?
Who can crash cars into each other headfirst without wearing seatbelts at about a combined speed of something in the region of about 140 miles an hour and then step out unblemished. Honest to God, I don't understand who these people are, why they're being pursued, why they're being tasked by government agencies to take on work that I was pretty sure we had armed forces to do, and why everything they do is based around the fact that they've got some cars. Or at least certainly wherever they turn up in a new location, they just have cars. I don't know where the cars came from. I don't know how they got 7 assorted supercars. That's never explained to me. They just turn up in a different country and they have cars. Big, shiny cars. Sometimes they crash the cars. Sometimes they fly the cars. Sometimes the cars get smashed up far more than they probably should. Sometimes the cars get smashed up far less than they should. I don't know. Have the cars got superpowers? What are these cars made of? Unobtainium? I don't understand any of it, and I certainly don't understand how it made so much money that it would indicate that people went back to see this more than once. Someone explain to me. And this is not a rhetorical question. I'm looking to you guys now. Tell me, what am I missing here?
I don't know. I honestly struggle to remember. But I don't remember hating it. I just remember sort of watching it vacantly, which generally I struggle to do on my critical faculties. Even if I try to switch them off, it's kick in. All I can clearly remember from that film is that The Rock looked like he was having fun and knew how stupid it was, but he's also wandering around Los Angeles with a minigun.
They pulled out of a drone.
With bullets that a magazine that didn't actually move, which that annoyed me more than anything, actually. He's standing with that minigun and firing it, but the belt feed didn't move. But I just remember The Rock is a ridiculous specimen of a human being.
The Rock at least had the courtesy to give me a lesson in theoretical mathematics, because up until this point, I had assumed, having sought, information hidden in books and things, that theoretically in a 3-dimensional universe in which we experience, you shouldn't be able to visualize a 4-dimensional shape. And then The Rock walked onto the screen. Has he always been this shape?
There's something about it's
ludicrous.
It's ludicrous, yeah. There's also something about him in that film wandering around Los Angeles in the rubble and stuff with his minigun that for some reason made me absolutely certain that at any point soon he was just going to go stars. I've no idea why, but it's like I kept looking at this thinking, why is this making me think of Resident Evil? And I could not get the thought out of my head at all.
I don't hats off to The Rock, because at least he seemed like he was having fun because he's actually not in the film as long as you would expect. I love that opening sequence of where he is confronted, well, not confronted by Jason Statham, but happens across him one night in the office.
Yeah.
a point at which ludicrously, and I'm sorry, I know this is apropos of nothing, I did at least laugh once in the film, and it was the point at which The Rock is sitting at his desk in his high-tech headquarters with papers in front of him with various criminals on them, with a big rubber stamp stamping "captured" in red ink on these paper files. Who's this guy again? Oh yeah, I remember him. Vdoomf. Captured. Claimed. I've no idea if that was meant to be a joke, but it completely broadsided me, and I did at least get a laugh. It's just a shame it came in the first 3 minutes of the film, and then past that I have literally no idea what was going on. Literally no idea. What baffled me is that the whole central theme of this film, and I'm guessing it's very subtly done, but I think it was supposed to be about family. I couldn't tell. I just get that feeling.
It comes up one or twice.
Yeah, I get that feeling because by the end of the film, I'd invented the Vin Diesel family drinking game, where if every time Vin Diesel says family, you take a shot, then at least you don't have to sit through the last 3/4 of the film because you'll be rat-arsed by that point.
How is your new liver, Craig? When you'll have had one, yeah? You've needed
Yes. Fortunately, it was paid for by Lycan, the makers of the Hypersport car. Yeah, I don't. This whole thing is alluded to throughout the film. I don't think anyone involved in this film realised that simply repeating a phrase over and over doesn't make that the underlying theme of the movie. And for how many times it's sort of rammed down your throat. Oh, family. I don't have friends. Family.
I mean, Jason Statham's character's basically getting in the same deal, isn't he? Because it's basically revenging his brother.
Getting in the same deal, but then they've critically overlooked the fact that no two actors in this film have any chemistry together whatsoever, and they stand around in groups like complete strangers, and I'm supposed to invest myself in the belief that these people all think of each other as family and that they would take a bullet for each other.
I can see some chemistry between Tyrese Gibson and Ludacris.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Although, the problem with Tyrese Gibson is that his character, not that there's been much character development, but his character's been the same since he first appeared in Too Fast, Too Furious. It's largely to have the fun made out of him, and to not want to do something till there's a lot of money. So at that point, he appears on screen, you just switch off because you know exactly what he's going to say anyway. So
in all the other films, at least most of the things that were being said sounds like something that could theoretically have been said by a human being at some point in their life. There's not a single line in this film that is of any sense whatsoever.
Nope.
Even when people were saying, no, I couldn't believe them because everything around it is so stupid.
Yep.
I've never heard dialogue so terrible in all my days, and I've seen some quite bad films.
And on suspension of disbelief, in a film in which these people are asking us, or certainly the way these people are conducting themselves suggests that it's supposed to be taken seriously, obviously there's an element of suspension of disbelief required in any number of films, and certainly in summer blockbusters. There is suspension of disbelief, and then there is what this film asks of you, which honestly borders on some sort of, I don't know, these people are apparently tapping interdimensional powers. And honestly, is it Paramount? It comes from Paramount, right? I believe. Universal, sorry. Right. Universal don't have a superhero franchise, apparently. I thought I saw one. Honest to goodness, the sort of the gravity-defying physics involved in this film, and it culminates.
The car out of the window. Come on, you don't buy
no,
that,
the
Craig?
bit between buildings. I don't honestly forget that. That to me wasn't even the most ludicrous bit. It ends on the most ludicrous note. It seems to have hijacked probably the stupidest stunt from the stupidest moment in any of the Transporter films, and then takes it up a notch. And disposing of one of the head bad guys. I was so removed from this by orders of magnitude by the sheer stupidity that was packed into almost every frame, and from the stunts to the subtle moments, such as Michelle Rodriguez's character, what's her name, Letty or something? Yeah, as her memories come flooding back, and her recall of her wedding to Vin Diesel, in which Vin Diesel gets married wearing a vest.
Nice vest though.
Oh, I don't, honest to God, and I don't understand.
I just forgot all about the Letty subplot and how she's not dead and she was dead, and I wish still didn't remember how stupid that was.
Obviously, I have no idea what that plot arc is, what that character's arc has been, but if you told me that she had died and had risen from the dead 3 days later, I would, after watching this, I would take your word for it. And not to be throwing references around, because obviously this film carries the aftermath of Paul Walker's sad departure from this mortal coil. But I don't believe for a minute that they were leveraging it for a cheap sort of emotional finale. But they clearly go for an emotional departure because those are the family. That's why. And people had told me, regardless of what you think of the film, prepare to be upset in the last couple of minutes.
Really?
And
Why?
I am quite open, and you guys know this. I will cry at the drop of a hat in the cinema, sometimes for reasons I don't even understand. And I sat watching this and expecting, I'm like, oh, this is going to upset me though, isn't it? Nah, couldn't care less, because I have no investment in these people whatsoever, or their supposed interpersonal relationships.
And to be honest, I think the scene that people were expecting tears to emanate from was just a repeat of something from Fast 5, I think. It's certainly when they're all standing around going, people in this room, these are a family.
Oh, so it's not just this one where he harps on about family.
No, it's all of this. This starts in the first film.
Okay.
But just going back to something you mentioned earlier, just because there was nothing for me emotionally in this at all. Generally, there's sentimentality. What might have made me cry is the dialogue, which you mentioned a few minutes ago. You don't think it's really wittily written around the gig. You don't think lines like the thing about street fights, the street always wins, is superb dialogue. Oh, sorry, Scott. Actually,
he does. I'm not sure he didn't realise that he was fighting Jason Statham and not actually a bit of street. You're not literally fighting the street. I thought these displayed remarkable prowess. I don't know, have we established earlier in the franchise Vin Diesel's skills as a martial artist or something? Because the way they were
for
wielding...
some reason, both him and Paul Walker are very good at the old chop socky for no adequately explained reason.
Right, okay. No, that's good. I was impressed by the way that Vin Diesel sort of like pulled a piece from his car and just decided to use it as a sword or something Diesel, like that, as best I remember.
Early on is basically, he's a thug. He's just a regular sort of brawler. That's all that seems to be established there. And Paul Walker's kind of weedy.
Now they're both elite agents.
Yes.
And they have, unstoppable powers and unlimited skills. They've essentially plugged themselves into the Matrix for a bit, haven't they? And just uploaded all of these crazy skills. And a word on the budget, $190 million or something ridiculous like that. And I keep hearing people say that it's all up on screen. No, it's not.
Cars aren't that expensive. Even CGI ones.
Yeah, and can I just say that as well, when we're talking about CGI, the couple of seconds of sort of fully CGI Paul Walker, which everyone seems to have brushed over. If you've got a $190 million budget, keep in mind we're now, 3-4 years on from Tron Legacy? And CG Paul Walker in the car at the end where they were being attacked by the drone, with the drones firing missiles, there's a couple of shots there where it was patently CG Paul, and if you freeze frame that, it's shocking. It is shockingly bad. It's not even Tron Legacy levels. You had $190 million to spend on this film, and you couldn't even pay the guy the courtesy of actually spending more than 5 minutes doing a little CG insert for a talking head bit when he's in the car at night as well. Come on. I'm baffled as to, and I don't say it to be contrary, because clearly a lot of people enjoyed this movie. I'm at a loss, guys. If you're listening to this and you enjoyed the movie, I'm not saying this facetiously. Feel free to drop us a message. Explain to me what enjoyment you took from this movie. I would be genuinely interested to know, because I was so disappointed by it. I literally got no enjoyment from it whatsoever. I'm just glad that The Rock and Kurt Russell clearly had some fun.
Yeah, for me, it's the point at which I could no longer just let it coast by on the fact that, for the most part, I kind of respect, if not like, actually, most of the actors that are in it.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think Vin Diesel's a great actor or anything, but he always seems like such a kind of humble, like a fairly down-to-earth guy.
Yeah, you let him off the hook, because at the end of the day, he's family.
I've also, again, he's not in the same league, but I always kind of think of him in the way of Arnie. It's like, never a great actor, but there's always something kind of likeable about him.
Yeah, and it's the same with Dwayne Johnson. To an extent, it's the same with Paul Walker. They all seem like, actually...
Well, assuming you forget Running Scared.
Yeah, stars that are not total idiots, or they're not just self-obsessed, tubes.
I disagree with you on Vin Diesel because I've never felt engaged by him, but certainly, yeah, I mean,
I'm not claiming that he's ever any good in the camera.
It just seems likeable
with a few possible exceptions of things like Pitch Black, where it kind of fits a bit more.
Yeah.
But it's just more in terms of outside of Hollywood. I just have to know that
Dwayne Johnson strikes me as a good guy, and we all know that apart from blowing deers' heads off regularly, that Kurt Russell's all right.
Exactly, and this is really just the point at which I can no longer tolerate the films that they have produced based on
goodwill alone.
Their personality. It's now you can. After about half an hour, it's like, okay, all the goodwill engendered by these people has now worn off, and now I'm left with just this nonsense.
Yeah. Geniality is no longer a get out of jail free card, I'm afraid. I'm really just bizarre and really actually quite disappointed because I expected a couple of hours of good entertainment and I didn't even get that. But, surely the box office doesn't lie.
I mean, if they'd kept up the promise of that first 5-minute Jason Statham reveal.
It was kind of like Diet Crank, right? Crank Light.
Yeah, if they'd made it Crank 3 or something like that, I think that probably would have worked far better than what they've actually ended up with, which is just a pile of incoherent mess.
Yeah, or if at least had embraced how stupid you can't tell me the people involved in this film thought that they were making a great piece of art and that any of this was in any way realistic whatsoever. Like I said, the building jumping part in Dubai. Oh my days. Really the only way to have pulled this off would have been in a sort of camp tongue-in-cheek sense in which everybody made it quite clear that yes, we know this is a bit silly.
Yeah, it's a bit too earnest, isn't it?
Oh, it's far too earnest. I think that's what kills it more than anything else.
Yeah.
But it's certainly not made me want to go back and watch any of the rest of the series retrospectively, which is a disappointment. But there you go. From what I mean, other people have told me that there are good films amongst that, but then some of these people said that Seven was great as well. So, I don't know.
I can't really truly recommend any of the series, but that is probably because I've literally no interest in cars other than the utilitarian aspect of getting me to work and back in the morning. If you're more of a petrol head, I can see some of the earlier ones being a bit more interesting to you, but
that's the thing. At this point, it's like I find myself asking: is this, if you're into cars, right? If you're a petrol head, is this the kind of sort of macho fantasy that people who are into cars have? Is this the life they envisage themselves leading?
No, I think if you really cared about the cars, the first couple of films, probably Tokyo Drift as well, is more interesting because it's been remarked upon before, but people have created graphs and stuff about how much the first couple of films were about fast and furious was a very basic thing, and then as the series has gone on, basically the furious aspect has become more and more. They started off at being about racing and ended up being massive action movies instead of how they began. So the cars more or less don't matter now.
I think a great deal of it doesn't matter, to be honest with you, the script being part of that. And it'll be interesting to see what they do with 8 then. I mean, there is obviously going to be an 8, and from what Vin Diesel says, a 9 and a 10 at least. So, did you guys see the... I'm still trying to figure this out. Did you guys see the sort of puff piece, the interview he did? I think it might have been one of the promotional pieces or something of the film, where Vin Diesel described this installment as being for Paul, and Fast and Furious 8 will be from Paul.
No. I mean, is he setting himself up as a psychic, or
I don't know. I can't rule anything out at this point. The next
generation of Doris Stokes is Vin Diesel.
This is the thing, we can't rule anything out. On the basis of this, I genuinely don't know how to take that. It doesn't make any sense as a sentence anyway. But if you think of the myriad possibilities it presents in the universe that these movies are set, it could literally mean anything. It could literally mean anything.
To be honest, of this entire series, the only one that's stuck out in my mind at all is Tokyo Drift. And that is because it's a completely separate film from all the rest of them, to all intents and purposes. So if you're going to watch any of the films, I would recommend you don't watch Tokyo Drift, you watch Initial D, which is a better film. It was made in 2005.
There's all sorts of just answer me. All sorts of characters who pop up in this film who are sort of everyone seems familiar with. Are they pretty much all from previous installments? Like the sort of the young American guy with the shaved head when Dominic goes to Tokyo to collect Han's body
Drift.
And stuff.
Yeah.
Is he from Tokyo Drift? Right. Okay.
Lucas Black.
Right. Right, okay. So not that I'm actually interested, but I just kind of had to have that settled.
You see, it all makes sense in canon.
Yes, clearly. I guess the biggest question based on this would, as far as I can tell, is which order should I throw these discs in the bin? Should Tokyo Drift go in between 6 and 7, or should it go in third? But there you go. I think I've said enough. I think you guys probably know where I'm coming from on this.
I think we've all said enough at this point.
Yes. I could talk all day about this film, and I'm not joking. I made detailed notes.
We think it's brilliant. 5 out of 5.
Yes, exactly.
Please put us on some sort of DVD cover.
2 thumbs way up. I will,
but way up where, we're not saying.
Yeah, I think one day, maybe a couple of years down the line, when I've had time to clear my head a bit and view this all a little bit more in context, maybe I'll put my thoughts down in a blog about this film. But until then, just let me deal with it internally. I just need time. All right, I just need time. But there you go. I think that just about wraps it up for this intermission podcast. Then we've probably run longer than we needed to, but there you go. That's value for money, folks. For the princely sum of free, you got all of this wonderful, insightful content. I suppose, what's our next stop? I think it's going to be Old Man Action, right?
Correct.
Yes, you can look forward to our Old Man Action podcast next in about 10 days. But until then, I was Craig. Thank you for listening. Scott was Scott.
See ya.
And Drew was Drew.
Bye-bye.
See you soon. Bye.